Today, we are in a crisis. And I'm suggesting that part of our crisis is not only the colonial, but the post-colonial. And as I speak now, what is undermining our development is that there is a new scramble for Africa.
There's always a scramble for Africa. I mean, yeah, we know because Africa is rich in resources and we have failed to manage these resources for a very long time. I know many of us have been talking about the continental free trade area and how Africa can trade amongst themselves, but have we actually actualized this fully? Anyway, that is what I want us to explore today. In this video, I want us to see on how African development and the Agenda 2063 can actually be realized. Listening from the great PLO Lumumba and Dr. Arikana Chihombori, who have been very critical about, making sure that the conversation goes around Africa so that we can have an independent Africa. But anyway, before we even get started, welcome back to another episode of Africa is Marwa. I mean, if you haven't subscribed, take 3 seconds of this video to hit on that subscribe button. And also, don't forget to hit on that notification bar so that anytime we do a video, you're able to be notified. We need to really take the conversation of the African agenda all over Africa and all over the globe. So before we even get started, I want us to get a clear overview of where all this problem started. And I know all of us are aware where this problem started. We know we've had such greats like Thomas Sankara, who, for the colonial masters, and who said that Africa should actually unite and stop relying on the Western world. I mean, we can still hear the echoes of our great fathers like Mwalimu Julius Nyerere and Kwame Nkrumah, who continuously told us that Africa has to unite, because if we don't unite, then Africa is going to perish. And we can never have a prosperous Africa if we don't unite.
I'm a great believer in unity. I believe in the old adage, unity is strength. I mean, this is truly, it is strength. And the human race would be much stronger if we were united. We would get rid of a lot of problems in the world if we could be united. And therefore, the human race must move towards unity. And continents like mine, a country like Tanzania must move towards greater unity, continents must move towards greater unity, and the human race must move towards unity.
This African Union now. There is no time to waste. We must unite or we perish.
So, Dr. Arikana Chihombori actually explores how these agreements were reached, in the Berlin conference, and how they divided Africa, and we've since remained divided until to date. And this is why when we talk about even the Africa Free Continental Trade Area, we still can't trade amongst ourselves because we still have the borders. We still don't have securities in countries like Congo. So we still can't have goods moving from one part of Africa to the other. So how can we have even the Africa Free Continental Trade Area if we haven't actualized all this? And this is why the unity of Africa is the one step towards having, an independent Africa and having an Africa that is reliant on its own resources, because we know Africa is very rich. But anyway, let's listen to how Dr. Arikana Chihombori explores how they did us bad.
The exploitation that followed. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the Berlin Conference. The Berlin Conference, that's when the colonial masters got together and decided that these Africans who are so powerful, the Africans who were defeating them in battle with bows and arrows while they were fighting with guns, they wondered, how on earth are we going to defeat such an amazing race? You see, the truth of the matter is they tried for centuries. Any other race that would have gone what we went through as Africans would be extinct. But they realized that we are indestructible. So they decided to come together in 1884 November to talk about how we can effectively make sure that the Africans are forever defeated and dominated. So when they met in Berlin, they met to design Africa in a way that Africa and its people are forever defeated. That was 1884. Fast forward, nothing has changed. The strategy remains in place. You see, they designed these economies in a way that as long as these economies remain what they are as individual African countries, they are economies that can always be exploited. When is Africa going to wake up and realize that as we are today, we will never be in a position to take our Africa to its rightful place on the world stage? As a continent, we are a heavyweight. We belong in the big league, in the heavyweight ring. And the only way that we can take our Africa to its rightful place, it starts with a conversation with the image in the mirror. Because we need to decolonize ourselves. We have failed to come together because of the rule of divide and conquer, the seed that was also sown during the Berlin Conference. We must wake up and realize that we are victims of that. When we go to a negotiating table as black people, we always go feeling inferior. It goes back to Berlin Conference. And they come in feeling superior. So until the African wakes up and realize that we're just as good as anybody else, that we can play the big boy game just like they do. And the only way we can win, however, is to cleanse this, have a conversation with the image in the mirror, and unite.
You've heard Dr. Arikana Chihombori put it very clear about the exploitation that Africa has been undergoing for a very long time. Yes, we're saying that Africa has had independence, and we know many countries in Africa, like Ghana, have had independence for over 60 years, and many other African countries. But yet, we're still talking about, Africa uniting and Africa coming together to do trade amongst themselves. Africa coming together to utilize its own resources. Africa coming together to ensure that there are no borders. But yet, we are still relying on the Western world. We still don't have a single currency. We still don't have, we are still adoring the foreign languages that were left behind. In that, even today here, I'm using English, and for me to communicate even better, to be understood well, I have to use English. But yet, we cannot use Afrikaans. We cannot use, Shona. We cannot use Hausa, and different many languages that we have in Africa. We still cling onto those foreign languages. But the only solution we have is we have to come together, and Africa has to unite. And unity doesn't mean that just having the African Union, because we've had the organization for a while now, but has it reached its mandate? Anyway, let's go to PLO Lumumba, who actually puts it clear that for us to unite and for Africa to have the development that we really need, and for Africa to even actualize the Africa Agenda 2063, then we must ensure that we have peace and security. We must ensure that we are united and we have no borders, and we are talking in the same language, in that even if I want to travel from Kenya to Egypt to Liberia, I don't encounter any issues in terms of having visas or having to go through security checks, because once you're an African, then you are an African.
And I know why we don't have internet connectivity. It is because we are divided. We have 55 telephone access codes. Nigeria 234, Ghana 233, Kenya 254, Tanzania 255, Uganda 256, Zambia 260, Zimbabwe 263. How can we, in this day and age, you cross into Benin, you cross into Togo, you cross into Guinea-Bissau, you have a different internet connectivity. Why can't Africa have a single satellite? and a single telephone call, so that when I travel from Mogadishu in Somalia to Dhaka in Senegal, like the Chinese do, like the Americans do, like the Indians do, we can have the same, because communication is critical to development. And I'm saying this, part of my agenda is to prick your conscience with live examples, that you may go out there irritated, but irritated to do the right thing. And I'm suggesting that indeed, when we talk about development, this is what we must do. But is Africa conscious of her state? Yes, Africa is conscious. This is what makes me happy. That after all these analysis, it appears to me that Africans have now recognized that going forward, we can only defeat the conspiracies, we can only have development as we are talking about it by working as a team. And that is why, beyond the Millennium Development Goals, beyond the Sustainable Development Goals, we as Africans under the aegis of the African Union do now have our grand vision of Africa Agenda 2063. And that Africa Agenda 2063, let me tell you, if we can fulfill it, but the most important thing is that Africans are now beginning to see beyond the next election. Because part of our problem in Africa has been that we plan in 5-year circles. We don't have a grand agenda, but now we have a grand agenda. And if you look at the 7 pillars of Africa Agenda 2063, everything is covered. Health is covered. Research and science is covered. Climate change is covered. Women's participation is covered. Democracy and governance is covered. The arts and the culture are covered, so that Africa can become a serious player in the international agenda. As we speak now, we are not a serious player. It is only through industrialization that we are going to be manufacturers in all sectors. As it is now, 80% of what we consume in manufactured goods are from China. If China closes shop, we are dead. We are dead. So I'm thinking that Africa Agenda 2063 is a good thing, but we must work at it. I'm thinking that Africa Continental Free Trade Area is a good thing. Launched with the Secretariat in Accra, Ghana, a good thing. But how are we going to trade? How are we going to get somebody to drive a truck from Accra, Ghana to Juba or to Asmara in Eritrea without peace and security? So you can also see that peace and security is at the very heart of it. In the United States of America, and many of you are familiar, you can drive a truck from Florida through to Alberta in Canada, and it is safe. The roads are good, the security is there. I'm saying, therefore, that as we talk about development, we must think about development in a very comprehensive manner. We must ask ourselves how we govern. And I want to conclude my presentation to you by telling you that Africa must be very careful. We must be very careful because of lack of resources in Africa. I'm beginning to hear things that worry me. And because I'm a keen student of what is happening in Africa, I'm getting worried on a daily basis. The forces that divide us, the belief by many people in Africa that if we separated from our current countries, we would be better. It is beginning to happen. It is happening here in Nigeria. It is happening. I saw a letter last week addressed to the president of Zambia by a people in Zambia called Baroseland. And they are telling President Hakainde Hichilema that you remember in 1964, we had an agreement with the Lusaka government that the time has now come for Baroseland to become an independent country. Can you believe it? I hear people in Namibia saying, do you remember that there was a strip called the Caprivi Strip? I hear people in Ghana saying that you remember that in the Volta region we had a different country. I hear people in Zimbabwe saying that there should be a country called Mtuakazi. I hear people in South Africa, the South Africans, say that we should have a separate country in the Western Cape. I hear people in Ethiopia saying we should have Tigray and Oromo. The centrifugal forces are there. And the only way to bring them in is to create a sense of belongingness. The people must feel that they are part of it. I remember the words of John Garang of South Sudan when he spoke in Khartoum. He told the Numeri government, we do not want to create a separate state, but make unity attractive. Make unity attractive, make Sudan attractive, make Khartoum attractive, because if you don't make it attractive, we will separate, and that will make us weaker. And I'm saying this because of this thing we call democracy. Democracy demands that people have a sense of belonging and that they believe that the country in which they live represents their interests and that deliberate efforts are being made in that regard. So, fellow Africans, I'm one who believes that this continent has a contribution to make. There is not a continent today that has the natural resources that this continent has. Not one. There is not a continent today that has a population as young as ours, which could be a resource. There is not a continent. There is not a continent today that has the resources in different diverse ways which can be harnessed. With a population of 1.4 billion, we are a potential market.
Yes, we all know what Africa needs. We all know what we need to take so that we can unite as Africa. And there's no one who is going to actualize this if we can't do it by ourselves. And this is why Pan-Africanists like PLO Lumumba, like Dr. Arikana Chihombori, continue to bring this conversation forward, ensuring that each and all of us are able to understand why we really need this unity. We know Africa is rising and Africa is waking up. We have seen it in the Sahel region. Talk about leaders like Ibrahim Traore, who has come out so strongly to ensure that they bring this conversation into reality now that they are holding positions and they're making sure that they talk African and they lead the African way. We've seen what he has done with the French colony. I mean, even how he has influenced the Sahel region to start utilizing their own resources. And we've seen how Niger has started making, lots of money and even influencing their GDP in terms of even having to run their own resources. And this is what the West don't want, because they know this is now a significant strength for Africa. Once we start having Africa uniting from one region to another, then it means that they won't be able to utilize the resources that we have. It means that we'll have a bargain power and we'll be able to sit on that table, the table that they no longer want us, and the table that they had to sit in the Berlin conference to actually, set some rules to divide Africa. But we're very hopeful because every year and every time an election happens in a country, we start to see revolution in Africa. We have seen it in the Sahel region, and we've seen it in other leaders now trying to come up, and even the younger generation coming out so strongly to say that enough is enough, and especially for the African puppets that we have, those who still worship our colonial masters. Many young people have decided that it is not going to be business as usual. We've seen the case of Kenya with the Gen Zs, and we've seen even the Togo rising, the youth saying enough is enough for one single family, leading their country for more than a decade, intergenerational. They're having it in way of a monarchy and calling it a democracy. And this is just the beginning. I mean, in the next few years, Africa is going to have that critical unity that we have been talking about. And all of us are going to be part of it. So, Africans, let us keep it high, because we know these conversations, once we keep them going, and just the way Mwalimu Julius Nyerere and Kwame Nkrumah told us, we have to unite. And there is no other way that we can actually become independent and stop relying on the West without unity. We have to unite, or else we will perish.
We want, therefore, to develop our own community and an African personality. Others may feel that they have evolved the very best way of life, but we are not bound like slavish imitators.
Do you believe that it's the highest time for Africa to unite, and that this is the time that each and every one of us, from you in Ghana, from you in Nigeria, from you in Niger, from you in Botswana, from you in South Africa, from you in Kenya, to just come together and make sure that this conversation goes across Africa so that Africa becomes independent. Anyway, if you found this video impactful, I mean, why not take 3 seconds of this video before we wind up to subscribe and also hit on that notification bar so that anytime Africa's Marwa posts a video, then you're able to be notified. But otherwise, that brings me to the end of this video, and I'm very hopeful that we're going to pick up this conversation, all of us as Africa, to ensure that Africa becomes independent and Africa stop relying on the West. Until next time, bye-bye.